Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Val Panko, and I'm the Manager of Advisory Services with FCC in Regina, and I am very happy to have you with us today. Finally, we've been experiencing some technical difficulties on our end, so we're going to try to go ahead. I appreciate you all sticking it out this far. We're going to do some small adjustments. I was warned the worst thing that can happen is we can lose our speaker, and I'd have to tell jokes for an hour. And as we got closer and closer, we started to realize, yeah, we've lost our speaker. So we've got her in by phone, and we're going to remotely kind of advance the slides so you'll see them that way. So just apologies for that up front. As we get started, I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from traditional lands of Treaty 4, which includes the Blackfoot, Métis, and Oche-Sakakowin. We respect the long-standing relationships with First Nations people, and this recognition is more than an acknowledgement of territory. This is about recognizing Indigenous people across Canada and to honor and respect the diversity and strength of all Indigenous peoples. So we thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules today. We will talk about what a peer group is and the benefits of joining one. We believe this session will help you learn how peer-led learning can be a secret weapon to running a better business. You'll discover how tackling issues, sharing your talents and strengths, and going outside your comfort zone can bring clarity and new perspective to your decision making. So a few reminders before we introduce our speaker. Today's session will be recorded and a link will be sent out to you on Monday, July 26th. So if you wish to watch it again. Closed captioning is available for today's event. To use live captions today, go to your meeting controls and select more options to turn on live captions. There'll be a Q&A after the presentation, so please use the Q&A on the right side of the screen to ask any questions during the session, and then we'll get to those as many as we can toward the end. I recognize we've started late, so if anybody needs to drop off, feel free, but if we have those extra questions and we go a little bit longer, expect that we might do that. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Denise Filipchuck. Denise has developed a keen interest for agriculture on the family farm in Swan River Valley in Western Manitoba at an early age. She is the CEO of Filipchuck Management Inc. and brings a wealth of multifaceted expertise in farm business, transition, and expansion planning, financial analysis, risk, and growth management as well. Denise also provides peer group and workshop facilitation and speaks at a number of ag industry events. She'll be joined today by Ryan Bowditch. Ryan's a producer from Tisdale, Saskatchewan, and has been involved in a peer group with Denise. So he'll be able to speak to it from the producer's point of view. So Denise, I'll pass it over to you and we'll get going. Can you hear me, Denise?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Great. Thank you, Val, for the introduction, and thank you to FCC for hosting this event and bringing awareness and supporting producer peer groups. And thank you all for your patience in us getting started here this morning and having a little bit of technical issues. But also thank you for joining us today. We're going to have a bit of a chat about producer peer groups, what they are, benefits, what it looks like, is it right for you? And as well at the end, some next steps and how to get involved if you feel that this is something that you want to get involved with. Also, a special thank you to Ryan, who is joining us to provide his thoughts as a peer group participant and answer your questions as well at the end. So we'll just get started. And as I'm dialing in and you can't see me, I'm going to let my helper in the background flip the screen. So I will just ask Kendall that you can flip the screen to producer peer groups now. So producer peer groups, what are they? Peer group meetings are a confidential and safe place to share and get feedback from a small group of your peers about tough issues, create awareness and confidence, and help you build a roadmap for the future. So really, they're just as simple as that. And Kendall, you can switch the screen there. You should all be seeing composition. So producer peer groups, what they typically look like are less than 10 farms with no more than 15 people, no neighbors. Participant farms are located at least 1 hour apart, and this is to avoid any potential conflict, any potential competition, aspects. So just want to make sure that they're at least 1 hour apart. In some areas that might not be far enough, but to make sure that we've got a diverse geographical area that those producers are joining from. Typically, they are facilitated meetings. Businesses can have similar or diverse enterprises. So they may be groups where the producers are all of a similar enterprise, or we may have very diverse groups as well. Participants are progressive with a business management orientation. So these discussions that happen are not ones that would typically happen in the coffee shop. These are business and management discussions that happen during these peer group meetings. So Kendall, you can flip to structure page. I'll let everyone follow along there. So producer peer group structure. So what they typically are going to look like, there's different ways that we can set up producer peer groups, and as part of this FCC pilot project, we're going to be looking at promoting different types of structures. So they may be in person, they could look like a third party facilitated, or they may be producer facilitated. They could be virtual, as we've been living in more of a virtual world the last year and a half. Many folks are getting used to having virtual meetings, and that may eliminate some of the challenges with travel for producers to meet in all one central location. There's commonalities between participants in some cases, where there's perhaps grain, beef, dairy, young farmers groups, etc. Or they might be a diverse group where there's primary production, including some ag value. They may have seed cleaning plants, seed growers, different types of ag value businesses alongside or separate from primary production, as well as those other groups that I mentioned already. So we'll flip to the next one, Kendall. So we'll look at peer group charter. So one of the fundamental components of a successful peer group is the charter. So what the charter consists of is a mission and a vision statement, values and relationships for the group. So this is defined by the peer group participants, the membership, criteria for that membership. So who gets to join, what type of group is this going to be? The rules for attendance is outlined in that charter. So we'll look at what the rules are for withdrawing from the group, or what the rules are for dismissal from the group. Attendance as well. So how many meetings the participants need to attend per year in order to stay actively involved in the group. The governance structure and the standard operating procedures are also defined in this charter that the group will create. Meeting leadership, who's going to facilitate the group, expense sharing, because there's going to be a bit of cost depending on the type of structure that you choose, what the facilitator duties are. If you're hiring an external facilitator for your group, what those facilitator duties are. Are they just to facilitate the meetings, or are they also to organize the meetings and provide reminders, book the venue, give out the pre-work for the meeting, whatever type of meetings that you're having, what that facilitator role is going to be. Standard operating procedures and protocols, so that will also be outlined in the charter that the group designed. And the facilitator duties, as well as we mentioned. Details for communication. So there may be communication between meetings, between producers. So that may be just on a WhatsApp chat, or it could be producers sharing phone numbers, email addresses, so that they can communicate between those meetings. So whether that structure is 2 or 3 meetings per year, whatever it is, but the idea is that you'll gain relationships between the members in the group so that you can also communicate between meetings. As well as the code of conduct. So that is also defined in that peer group charter. So Kendall, I'll get you to flip the slide there. So producer peer groups, what it can look like. So we should be looking at overview and setup. So here's what one sample meeting type can look like. And like I said, there's many different types of structures that you can look at, but just one that I'm very familiar with, and one that I use in the peer group that I facilitate. This is what, once you have your initial meeting set up with your charter, that's already been defined, here's what an ongoing meeting structure would look like. So we would start by reviewing those previous meeting notes and going through action items from the prior event. Introduction of new participants. So if you've started out with perhaps 4 producers in the group and you're growing that group over time, where now you've got a couple new ones at the next meeting and so on, till you get to a size that you feel comfortable with, or that you've decided as a group that you want to have in your group. You'll be onboarding new producers. So you're going to be looking at that. Charter development or review, depending on where you are in that stage. When those new participants are being onboarded into your group, you're going to want to have them talk a little bit about their farm, do a bit of a farm overview and introduction of themselves and their families and their family dynamics on their farm. Full presentation for new participants and update discussion for returning members. So one of the valuable pieces of a peer group is to talk about what your goals are, personally, family, and business, and also present that to the group just as a part of a sharing, but also as accountability. So when you've talked about goals between each other in the group, when you go back to your farms and you know you're coming back to the meeting, let's say perhaps 5-6 months later, there's going to be an accountability to the group to talk about how you have done with your goals and what challenges or successes that you've had. And then, of course, one of the other main benefits of a producer peer group is talking about management topics. So whatever it is that you are working through at that time. So you'll want to pick what management topic you want to bring forth to the group for feedback from that group, where you're getting successes on that. So whether it's going through a family transition, whether it's building a new shop, or just going through the construction phase, or even just the planning phase of that, or an expansion, whatever it happens to be, getting feedback from the members of that group. And then for subsequent meetings, talking about the action taken since the last meeting. So a big part of this, again, is just getting feedback from the group, but also a bit of accountability, because when you come back to the next meeting, everyone's going to want to hear how you have done and what progress you've made with regards to your management topic, as well as your goals. And then, of course, every meeting, we look at bringing in a new management topic. It could be a general topic that everyone is going to speak about, or it could also be individual ones. And then looking at just the meeting recap, as well as when you're going to host the next meeting date and location, what that agenda was going to be. And you may also want to have presenters at your meeting. So even though these aren't typically meetings where it's going to be sales-based, you may still want presenters from a learning perspective. So it might be a presenter to talk about family communication or having difficult discussions. Members in the group might decide that they want to have a presenter talk about grain marketing and the different types of tools that are available for that. So whatever the group decides that they want to have for a presenter, that is often an option as well. So Kendall, you can flip the slide to expectations. So the group must be actively engaged in participating, learning, and sharing within the group, and committed to each other's success. The facilitator can provide facilitation, coordination, recruitment, provide insights, experience, support, and direction, but the group must take the lead with regards to owning that group, and that's one of the fundamental pieces of a producer peer group. You need to not only own the group, but the charter that you have defined as a group as well. And each member must take the action and make the changes appropriate to their individual situation. So even though you're part of a group or part of a team, really, it develops to be, each individual is still, of course, responsible for what they say they're going to do in the meetings, when they take that back to their farms and implement those things that they talked about at the meeting, and then come back and share what their successes and challenges have been. So of course, some of the expectations are to attend the meeting. So the group charter will define what attendance at meetings are. Some options might be you need to attend 2 of the 3 meetings per year to stay an active member, or if you've got multiple farm family members that are going to be attending interchangeably, that one person from that farm would attend at least 2 out of the 3 meetings per year, as an example. So participation in the meetings, of course, is essential. So just to have good sharing and feedback, everyone needs to be participating in the discussion, sharing their experiences and sharing their management practices. So that also is a big part of the facilitator's role. Some folks will be more eager to share than others. That's just natural. And it's part of the facilitator's role to keep that conversation flowing and drawing in those folks that are maybe a little bit quieter, because everyone has something to say and share, no matter what their personality type is. Provide information in a proper, consistent, and timely manner. So, of course, if there is pre-work assigned for the meeting, that everyone come with that prepared to be sharing in the meeting. And 3 fundamental concepts, and these are really the key pins of a producer peer group, is trust, respect, and confidentiality. These groups are a safe and respectful place to talk about management issues. Confidentiality is a deal breaker. Everything that happens in the group stays in the group, and that there is an element of trust. Everyone is there for the benefit and the best interest of those in the group. And Kendall, you can flip the slide there to topics. So let's talk a little bit about what topics can come up in a producer peer group. And these are topics that, real topics that have come up in the peer group that I facilitate. HR compensation and incentives. This is often a big question. How much should I be paying my employees? Or what type of compensation and incentives are other farms offering? So this is one topic of conversation, a management topic that came up for feedback from the other group members. Transitioning a new family members into the business. So if you've got a larger scale business where you're transitioning new members in, it's not a situation where one generation is transitioning out, as we often think of transition, but in some larger farm business structures, there's more roles available, and family members can transition into the business. So that was one topic that came up. Scheduled farm management meetings. So just how to have those scheduled farm management meetings. How do you go about facilitating? How do you work through the difficult discussions that may come up in those meetings? Who's in charge of arranging the meetings, and what type of meetings? So that's another topic of discussion. Strategic planning is another topic that has come up for producers in that group. Transition issues regarding communication and decision making. Also another good topic to present to get feedback from the group on, because they have also gone through, many of them, very similar situations, no matter what size or type of farm that they are working in. Communication, role clarity, decision-making authority. These are topics that typically are of concern on many farms and in many farm family dynamics. So definitely this has come up in that peer group meeting as a topic from one of the producers to get feedback from the group and how they work through that on their farm. Having difficult discussions is another topic that can come up that you can get feedback from, and from a group of your peers. Managing conflict. When it comes to working in a family business, it's not a matter of if there will be conflict, but when. And so having some good tips and best practices from a group of your peers on how they manage conflict working in their family business is very valuable. Business structures. There's many different types of farm business structures out there. So just having a good roundtable discussion on what different farms are using for their structures or how those structures are changing over time as folks transition in or out of the business is a good discussion to have. Capital budget planning, as well as benchmarking, can be another topic as well once the group gets to a greater comfort level of sharing financial information, and certainly every group does not need to do that. It certainly takes a bit of a comfort level to get to that place, but that typically is something that comes up that producers would like to know about. And Kendall, you can flip the slides there. So am I a good fit? So this is often a question that producers will have when they're hesitant to join a producer peer group. So farming can be many things. It can be a way of life, a great entrepreneurial opportunity, a place to raise your children, a multi-generational family business, a place to let your dog run free without bothering the neighbors, a place to go for a walk or ride your horse or quad or snow machine for miles without leaving your own property. So for those of us who live out in the country on a farm, it's a pretty great place to be. A place to breathe farm fresh air, a quiet place to hear yourself think, and it can also be very lonely. In fact, I'll bet that many of you joining us today have felt very lonely at times in your farming career, or have felt alone in supporting someone close to you as they struggled through a difficult situation or decision. So if you're in that camp with many others that would like to see and hear how other producers have addressed the challenges that you are facing, and would like an opportunity to provide some value to others through your experiences, and yes, you have experienced a lot through your careers and do have significant value to add, then that producer peer group may be a good fit for you. So some of the things to consider when you're thinking, are you a good fit? Are you curious to learn? So you want to be learning from a group of your peers. If you're curious about that, you may be a good fit. If you're willing to listen. So part of being in a peer group is not just sharing, but also listening and providing feedback. Engaged in positive change. So for the things that you've learned in your peer group meeting, are you wanting to take some of that information back and apply that to your farm and see where you can make positive changes? Willing to contribute and provide value to others through your experiences. And this is, I often get this comment is, I'm not sure that I have anything to add. Those producers in the group maybe are running larger farms, and I think I don't have anything to add. But I can tell you that even no matter what size or scale you're farming at, you have gone through experiences that others can benefit from. So no matter what size that farm is, the family dynamics and typically the challenges that producers are working through are very, very similar. So yes, every producer definitely has some value to add to others through your experiences. Wanting to learn from the experiences and challenges of others. So that's a really great way to learn, is what have others gone through, similar situation as you, and what have they done, and what has the outcome been? So a little bit of a window into how someone else has handled the situation that you're working through, and what has been the outcome. And what to know, and if you want to know what you don't know. So coming into that peer group, you just don't know if it's a good fit or not. Give it a shot and see. You don't know what you don't know, so find out what that is. And Kendall, you can flip the slide there to benefit. So what's in it for you? Peer group participants have found significant value during those rich discussions that happen in that peer group meeting. So one of the benefits are strengthen and advance your management practices, build relationships with farmers with similar management mindsets. So like I said, again, these aren't the discussions that you would have in your coffee shop with your friends and neighbors. These are farm managers that you, before this, don't know of their farms, where they are even, and you get together and you talk about management. And like I said, there's that level of accountability, because when you come to the meeting, you're accountable to share, provide respectful, honest feedback, and come to the next meeting to share what your progress has been. Input, feedback on management issues. So share management techniques. How are decisions made? How are challenges handled? Is another really great benefit of being in a group of producers, like-minded producers. Benefit from experience, successes, and challenges of others. Support of an informal team. So many other businesses will have management team meetings, and that's not something typical of farms. Like we all know that typically when you're farming, you might have one or two people at best that you might have to bounce ideas off of. So it might be a spouse or a brother or a parent. Where in other businesses, we all have perhaps large management meetings or conferences, and typically farmers aren't able to have that type of support. So this provides a little bit of that. Non-competitive environment, because those producers are not in your area, they're not your friends and neighbors, they're not farms that are close to you or competing for the same land base, then you can share freely and openly. Unbiased feedback, and that's really what we're after in the group, is everyone provides unbiased feedback because there really is no conflict of interest there. Non-judgmental environment. Everyone is there for the benefit of each other and the group. And then again, of course, one of the main things is to make it safe and for the free flowing of information and feedback and sharing is that it is confidential. So when I talk to my group and we review the charter and we remind about confidentiality, I always say, this is like Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So what happens in the peer group stays in the peer group. And with the idea that there really is no accepting of any breach of confidentiality. What happens in that group stays there. So peer group meetings can take away, peer group meetings can allow those members to take away and apply to their individual circumstances what they have learned during that meeting from the group. The peer group participants have formed friendships and a support network that they can contact between meetings. So that's also a very valuable piece of getting to meet these folks from farms of different areas, perhaps even different provinces. They have created an informal team environment, something like I said that typically only occurs in other industries, and have removed an element of solitude. So one of the main benefits of a producer peer group is that you're not alone anymore. This is very typical, which of course is very typical of operating a farm business. So thank you all for joining us today. I've talked a bit about producer peer groups, what they are, what is involved, what different structures can look like. We'll take some time now for some questions from the group for Ryan and myself, and perhaps for FCC as well. And so Val, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Denise. That was terrific. I think you painted an excellent picture. I intellectually know what a peer group is, but how nice it is to hear you describe what it actually looks like from somebody in your position. And I actually hope to hear Ryan talk a little bit more from what it looks like from his position. So I'm going to start the question ball rolling with one for Ryan. So get ready. So tell me a little bit, I guess, about what being part of a peer group has been, how it's benefited you, what it's been like from your perspective.
So I really enjoy our meetings, and the best part I feel about them is that you can have conversations with real numbers with people that are somewhat like-minded, and there's no we agree to be honest with each other, which is a big deal, because most farmers are like me, and we may talk in general numbers, or yield might be higher or lower depending on how things are going, or you might be paying more or less rent to your neighbor, but you don't really know exactly what you're telling each other all the time. And in this group, we agree to tell each other the truth. So that's a beneficial. I also like that you can bounce ideas around and then hear what other farms have been doing and have found success or failures in.
Excellent. That's good stuff. So maybe I'll just put a little reminder out that if anybody has any more questions that they'd like to ask, or if you don't want to just leave it to me for the rest of the time, feel free to pop something in the Q&A box and we'll get through those. But in the meantime, maybe I will lob one back over to Denise. So I know you mentioned confidentiality and, you know, financial information, things like that. But I guess, like, devil's advocate, like I wonder if people are uncomfortable sharing, even like how much information are they comfortable to share even within the group. So I understand it's not going to go anywhere further. You know, confidentiality is of utmost importance. But to what degree and to what depth do people to go into with their financial information as part of these groups?
So typically in that first year, in my experience, so it takes that first meeting to get your group really set up and just start talking about a bit of management discussions. But typically speaking, it takes a good 2 to 3 meetings before that group really gets comfortable enough with each other to start sharing financial information. So if you've got a group that is comfortable and they want to start right away, then that is something that the group would decide, and that would be defined in their charter that, yeah, we want to get into sharing financial information at the beginning. But if the group all decides, you know what, we're not going to do that in the first year, that's going to be in year 2, where we start showing some numbers with regards to profitability, perhaps on a $ per acre basis, or different types of expenses, perhaps what farms are spending on labor costs as a $ per acre, let's say, that type of thing. Then they will decide as a group where their comfort level is. But typically speaking, it takes likely 3 meetings before that group is really comfortable enough with each other to start sharing financial information.
Good stuff. Okay, I've got a question come through the Q&A. So what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced in facilitating or being part of a peer group? So this is going to be a double-sided question. So facilitating to you, Denise, and over to you, Ryan, for being a part of it.
Okay, so I'll talk about facilitation. As far as a biggest challenge, really, it's getting producers interested in being involved in a peer group and just being comfortable enough to join. That is really the biggest challenge. And so working with FCC to promote peer groups across the country and just bring some information and awareness, we're hoping that we can overcome that challenge. But as far as facilitating inside the group, as long as you've got a facilitator, a trained facilitator, I don't feel that there's going to be a lot of challenges within it. That facilitator is trained to ensure that there's active participation and that no one overrides the group or, you know, takes over, you know, speaking over others. So as long as you've got a trained facilitator that can manage the group, I don't see a challenge there. It's really getting those folks actively involved and committed to being part of that group on a long-term basis.
Ryan?
Actually, I think probably scheduling is the most difficult thing about it. Getting a time when everybody can attend the meetings. And we've also faced some trouble growing our peer group to a number that's that makes the peer group valid, I think, but we're getting there. So that's the two for me anyway.
Good stuff. Okay. So another question, what is the first step if I want to start a peer group? So Denise, I'll shoot that one over to you.
So if you're alone and you want to start a peer group, I believe there's quite a few people on the call today. So I would contact FCC and see who's interested, because I think we've got a really good number of folks that may very well be interested. But if you've got a group that you know are interested, then what you want to do, of course, as Ryan mentioned, scheduling is one thing. Getting those folks together in one spot to basically get started. Decide if you're going to have a facilitator, you'll want to seek out a professional facilitator, or if you're going to have it facilitated by one of the producers in the group, then just ensuring that that producer has some facilitation knowledge and training.
So maybe I'll just add on there from FCC point of view, hang on until the end of the call because we'll actually set you up. We're going to send out some information for you if you are interested in joining a peer group. So stay tuned. Okay, next question. This one's for Ryan, so be ready. Ryan, can you share a couple of habits you have changed on your farm as a result of your peer group lessons learned?
Yeah, we did. We changed some of our human resources stuff because of what was happening on another farm that I liked, and just through discussions at our meetings was seemed like a good idea, and it worked really well for them. So other than that, not yet. We've because of COVID, obviously we haven't met lately, so that's I'm looking forward to the next one.
Fair enough. Okay, so I've got another one. How do you actually meet the people willing to start a group? So I know we've talked about maybe we can provide some opportunities for that, but Denise, how did you at the beginning, just I'm curious to know just kind of how'd they get started up? How did you get them together?
So what we did was we had a booth at a couple of ag industry events and just pulled out to the public on just on some surveys as to if those folks are interested in peer groups. So got a number of producers that said, yeah, they were interested in peer groups, contacted those, had an information meeting that of course was free of charge. Just here's what the structure of the peer group that we were looking at starting looked like, and got a number of folks from that information meeting, then committed to say, yeah, this is actually what I'm looking for, and I want to get in. So a bit of a process to get those folks that are interested in a peer group actually signed up and committed to being in that group. But that's what we did. It was surveys and then an information meeting and then to sign up.
Excellent. So Ryan, I'm curious to know, is this how you got connected with Denise? Is that how you got involved in this peer group?
Actually, Denise approached me about it. I've been a customer of Denise's for a few years now. So
excellent. Okay, so a little different way of getting in. That's good. Okay, another question we've got in the Q&A. Is there a place we can go to find an existing peer group? So I'll just make a quick pitch here. Hang on the line and we'll tell you how we'd like to help you get started with a new peer group. So to initiate one, we can help out with that. But the question, an existing peer group, that's a question maybe back for Denise or Ryan, if you guys know any spots to go to find existing peer groups.
Yeah, I'll answer that one, and then Ryan can as well. As Ryan and I both mentioned, we do have room in our peer group. So if you are interested, there's, as Val mentioned, a couple avenues. You can go through the FCC group route, and we'll talk about that at the end of the call. But we also are still taking producers in the peer group that is active and running. Of course, we haven't had meetings for the last year and a half due to some challenges with COVID, but definitely we will be starting up again as long as we can for December. So if you're interested in that, definitely get in touch with myself. My information is up there on the screen, I think still, and or contact FCC and they can forward you to myself as well. And we'll see if you are a good fit indeed for that group that is already running.
Good stuff. Thanks, Denise. Okay, Brian, do you know of any other ones? Any other ways to get into existing ones?
no, I'm not aware of any, sorry.
No, that's okay. Denise answered it for us, we're good. Okay, another question. Are there resources that you would suggest for learning more about facilitating a group? That's a Denise question, I think.
Okay. So what you can do is you can look at taking facilitation training. So I would say just Google that, and there's companies in Canada that do facilitation training. So one that comes to mind is Facilitation First, and that's actually where I took my facilitation training. And so that would be, and that's the only one I have top of mind right now. But if you do a Google search on companies that do facilitation training, that would be a good source for you as well.
Great stuff. Okay. Is your existing peer group a grain farm based group or other ag industry?
So
I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, Denise. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, the producer peer group that I have going now is a mixed group of grain and cattle producers. So some are just grain, and one or two is grain and cattle. So that one is primarily a very typical Manitoba, Saskatchewan group with producers, of course, in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And we meet at a central location, trying to coordinate that with ag industry events. So we've got something else to do while we're attending that peer group meeting. But yeah, that one is a mix of grain and beef.
Great. Okay, we're getting some activity now. So next question. Do you get any resistance to committing to a charter?
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
So we make our own charter as in the initial meeting of the group. So I guess somebody that joined would have to agree to the charter that we already have, or we would amend it. But it's the mindset that when you go to a meeting or when you join a group that it's confidential and you must attend. So I think going into it, you would know that already. So very little resistance to the charter.
Excellent. Okay, maybe we'll take one last question and then we'll move on. So this last one, what are the costs of belonging to a peer group? Denise, I'll let you start on this one, and then I can take over if we're talking anything else.
Okay, so that can vary greatly depending on if you're hiring a company that's already running peer groups. That cost can vary greatly. It can be, if it's going to be perhaps managed or an FCC group, that could be a minimal cost. It could be somewhere in the perhaps $1,000 per meeting, or it could be, I know producer groups that are running in the States, and they're very common in the States. Those ones can be upwards of $10,000 per year. So it varies greatly depending on the company. If you're hiring a company to facilitate and organize your group, it can vary greatly. If it's producer-led, then it can be just as simple as booking your venue, so your caterer and your meeting room. And then, of course, your travel costs. So it can vary greatly depending on what type of structure you're going to have.
Good stuff. Okay, well, maybe I'll take this opportunity then, because I'm going to add a little bit more information about FCC's pilot projects going forward, and we'll cover some cost information in there. But first off, thank you guys. That was excellent questions. So terrific engagement from you guys all out there, and then excellent answers from Ryan and Denise. So I appreciate that. So before we wrap up today, FCC, we really see the value that peer groups have for our industry, and we really want to support folks in terms of seeing if we can help them get connected to other like-minded individuals and get something like this started if they're interested. So we are initiating a pilot peer group starting in November, and you guys on the line today or watching the recording will be the first to hear about this. This is our first shot at it. So in the post email that you'll all receive, you'll get some information on how to fill out our intake form and how to be a part of this pilot. So now, first of all, it's not required. If you're, if you're just interested, you're not sure if you want to step in and commit fully, let us know. We can give you more information. You can consider it. It isn't like you pull the trigger and you're stuck in this. So it really is pretty flexible. We want to work with you. Now, we may not have enough room for everybody, so we might have to develop a bit of a waiting list. But if you're selected to participate, you'll be matched with 6 to 10 other farms across Canada, and then we'll provide you with a facilitator as well, so to do the magic that Denise does. So these sessions will be held virtually, so we'll start out that way over a 5-month period from November of this fall, so 2021, into March of next year, so 2022. It is completely free. So it's open to FCC and non-FCC customers, so you don't have to be a customer of ours to get involved. Your commitment, just like Ryan and Denise have mentioned, your commitment would be to attend the meetings. That's what we would hope at the very least. And so we suspect that'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 hours over the 5-month period. So all of this information, if you didn't catch it all when I went through it really quickly, it'll be available in the post-event email that's going to come out later today. Or if you're interested, we're going to post a link to the intake questionnaire in our chat here. And so we'll see where that takes us. So that wraps it up for today. I'm going to assume that if most of you are on the line about a peer group event, maybe you're interested. So maybe this last proposal for you is something that is interesting. So I hope to see some folks maybe putting up their hands and interested to see if they want to participate along with us. But thank you for the participation and the great questions today. And again, thanks to Ryan and Denise, and I apologize, we had that, I'm sure that stressed everybody out a little bit, that little technical difficulty at the beginning, but you guys were champs and you did it, so I appreciate it. We'll be sending out an email on Monday, July 26th, following this event, with a link to the recording of the session so that you can view it again and watch it to your heart's content. We also have a link to an evaluation in this email. So I would encourage you to fill it out. Let us know how we did in this event. Let us know what we could do for other events, what you'd like to see. We really rely and use that information. And finally, please read the post-event email for any additional information on our peer group pilot and that link to participate. And I think that's pretty much it. We finished up on time. So until next time, take care and enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.